well, we don't want the car payment. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
why
slippery
not?
slope. Slippery slope.
How do you begin investing? Where do you start? And what steps do you take to make moves right now? Stay tuned in this video because we provide practical step after step after step to start beginning investing right now. Stay tuned.
How you can be the greatest salesperson on the planet. And so whatever the interest rate is, that is your return on investment. And that particular advice comes from Mark Cuban. And I thought it was
Mhm.
a very interesting way of looking at it. So even
Yes.
if it's 1%, your
Mhm.
return on investment is 1%. And you cannot get 1% in a savings account today. You can't do it.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, just really practical advice. For
Yeah.
me, I took out a student loan. We paid off 60% of it, but it's still got like 25 or $30,000
Yeah.
left. And man, Jim, I can't wait to pay off that loan because then guess what? I'm knocking it out hard right now. But when it's done, I'm going to save $700 a month. I'm going to feel like I'm on top of the world when that's
What
done.
are you gonna do with that 700 bucks?
I'm probably going to buy our family a bigger vehicle.
I'd be
That's
careful because I want to
mhm.
get to get the mortgage paid off. So I'd be careful there.
Oh,
That's
okay.
contrary to what I'm
Yeah.
telling you. You know,
Yeah.
I may be, I would really look at the vehicle you have right now and
Well,
say, okay,
I don't
is
know if
this
I'd buy like a extravagant vehicle. I'd
well,
buy
hold on.
something
You
mhm,
didn't let me finish. I would look at the vehicle that you have right
mhm,
now and say, now, do I really need another vehicle? I'd really look at
mhm,
that.
mhm.
And is that really necessary? Well, when we go on vacation, well, Derek, how often do you go on vacation?
Right. I know, my
Once a
wife
year.
and I,
So
we're
you're going to buy
really
a vehicle specifically on vacation? Well, why don't you let's go a different way here. So
right.
let's keep the vehicle we have. Let's make sure it's maintained properly. Let's take very good
Yeah,
care of it so that
right,
we can get that mortgage paid off, right? And then that would be a thought after
right,
that. But so think about this. So we're going to go on vacation. The vehicle clearly is not big enough for what we want to do.
right,
Why not rent a vehicle?
right. That's our
Right?
exact strategy, Jim. It's funny that you
Yeah.
say that because
Yeah. Why not just
people
rent
been
a vehicle and
people
it's
been
going to
saying,
cost you?
"Oh, you have 3 kids, like, why don't you go get a van or go get something bigger?" We just have a
Yeah.
sedan, and it's like, "Well, we don't want the car payment." And it's like, "Well,
Just
why
slippery
not?"
slope. Slippery
Right?
slope.
It's like, "Well, I mean, our sedan's only 7 years old. It's not the oldest thing in the
Yeah.
world." Right? It's
Well,
so
let's back up a second. Remember,
mhm,
when people are asking you these questions, I have a great, and I wouldn't say this, but I had this thought. It's like mind your own garden.
mhm.
Mind your own garden. Really, it's what
Yeah.
I plant in my garden is none of your business. So why don't you have a minivan? Well, pretty sure that's none of your business. Yeah, pretty sure
Yeah.
that's none
I
of your
honestly think
business.
people wanna be helpful, right? It's like, "Oh,
It's
you
not
you deserve
helpful.
you
It's not
deserve a
helpful.
a bigger vehicle for your
No, you
family." And it's
don't.
like,
Why? Why do you deserve another vehicle? Who said that? What do you
right, I agree.
send me the
Yeah.
argument. Oh, I deserve another vehicle. Really? You deserve no, you don't deserve anything. What do you mean you deserve another vehicle? No, you
Right,
don't. You do deserve to be debt free. You deserve that.
right,
But it
yeah.
takes work. It's like I
Mhm.
want to be able to do 50 push-ups. Well, how many can you do right now? I can do two. Well, you got some work to do,
Right.
brother.
Somebody
I
yeah.
deserve to be able to do 50 push-ups. No, you don't. No, you don't. You really don't.
So, Jim, you were suggesting that maybe instead of buying a bigger vehicle, that when I go on vacation, I rent a car, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Great
yeah.
advice just to think about of like sometimes I think we buy things for one-off occasions, right? It's like, "Oh, I
Yes.
might use this twice a year to go
Yep.
visit my family an hour south of Pittsburgh,"
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Well, that's not very often.
Yeah.
So
Guilty, yeah, and I have to say, as a
mhm, mhm,
prudent financial advisor, I don't always follow my own rules, and so I've done that many, many
mhm,
times where it's like, oh, this is
mhm,
a great idea, and I'll buy
mhm,
something and literally not use it often, but maybe sometimes never use it. So I'm very guilty of
mhm,
having that trigger finger, where it's like,
mhm,
yeah, and
mhm,
so I just think that if I'm in a wealth building mode, again, I
mhm.
know I'm being repetitious, but number one, I want to increase my income. Let's not forget that. So I want to bring more value
Yes.
to the hour. That's a
Yeah.
fundamental thing we could do a whole video on, right? Next, I want
Mhm.
to reduce expenses. So I have to really think
Yeah.
before I spend and do everything I can to not spend money unnecessarily. So when I reduce
Mhm,
expenses and I increase income, I use that money to
mhm,
start the process of paying down debt, starting with a small step first, moving to the all the credit cards, moving to the student loans, whatever the case may be. All the debt gets paid off from
mhm.
small to the biggest debt,
Yeah.
and then from there, I'm going to go with car number one, uh, and
Mhm.
I'm talking to the audience, of course. Car number one, and
Yeah.
then car number two, whichever one's smaller in terms of balance owed. That's the one I work on first.
Mhm,
Get the first
mhm,
car paid off. And by the way, don't go buy another car. Get it
Yeah.
serviced real well, and
Right.
and get it running properly. Take good care of it so that it lasts you till the second car is paid off and beyond. So
Mhm.
now the second car is paid off, and then I'm going to take all that money and plow it into the mortgage. And you say, well,
Mhm.
the family's outgrowing the car. Well, this
Mhm.
is part of the sacrifice. It's making do, right? So we make
Mhm.
do with the
Mhm.
car. We get it, both
Mhm.
cars. We get them serviced. They're really running good and all that,
Mhm.
and we start paying off the house. And then once we get the
Mhm.
house paid off, imagine that. I just want to go back to the joy, to the
Mhm.
relief,
Mhm.
to sleeping better at night, to the longevity aspect of it. In
Mhm.
terms of, if I don't have this stress on my head, I
Yeah.
just I'm going to be healthier, right?
Yeah. I mean, Jim, you told me that stress and anxiety are killers.
Oh well, so lack of sleep and
Mhm.
stress, the combination of those two are killers. Yeah, and so
Mhm.
lack of sleep creates stress. Stress creates lack of sleep. So just that it's
Mhm.
bi-directional. So if I have
Mhm.
stress in my life as a
Mhm.
result of too much month at the end of the money, which I did have too much
Mhm.
month at the end of the money, I'm making $5,000 a month and I'm spending $6,000. That's
Mhm.
stress, right? And it's a killer.
Mhm.
But it's a killer for stress alone, but also because it affects my sleep. And so
Mhm.
when my sleep is affected, it affects my stress. When my stress is affected, it affects my sleep. And then I start doing stupid stuff with my diet, and now I get unhealthy, and that creates more
Mhm.
stress, right?
Mhm.
And so it's
Yeah.
all connected. So
Yeah.
debt is a very, very big thing in our world today that I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't think we pay enough attention. I don't think we pay enough attention to a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
But this being one in particular that I think the encouragement is always more debt, more debt, more debt, like as if, excuse me, like as if it's a good thing. It's not a good thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now there is an aspect of debt, by the way. It's called OPM, other people's money, and I use debt very
Mhm.
successfully to
Mhm.
make money, and that's a whole different thing. So
Yes.
I'm not going to
Yes.
borrow money to go buy a car. I'm going to borrow
Mhm.
money to go buy cars that I can resell. There's a difference there, right?
Mhm.
And so if I
Mhm.
borrowed, just to pick a number, bought borrowed $100,000, and I bought 5 cars for 20 grand a piece, that's the 100 grand. It's
Mhm.
gone, right? I take those 5 cars
Mhm.
and I sell them for $2,000 a piece. And then there's
Mhm.
expenses, of course, that come out of that. But let's say I end up clearing $1,000 a car, that's 5 grand. So what I
Yeah.
did was I borrowed 100 grand and I
Mhm.
made $5,000. Now that $5,000 is not to be spent. That's money, right?
Mhm.
But I actually, if you think
Mhm.
about it, if I actually created $5,000, okay, I
Yeah.
have a I took the interest on the 100,000 came out of my expenses, so I actually did make $5,000. Can't spend it. Don't spend the money. So I do it again,
Mhm.
and I make another
Mhm.
5 grand. I do it again, and I keep building it up till eventually I have $100,000. Now I take my $100,000 and I
Mhm.
invested in those same 5 cars, and I make that same 5 grand
Mhm.
net, right? And so I do that for a period of
Yeah.
time, and now I have $200,000 because I've been prudent,
Right.
right? So now I have $200,000.
Yes.
Guess what? I can go buy 10 cars.
Mhm.
Okay, and now I'm making the same thing. I'm making that same $1,000 a car, right? So now I'm making ten
Mhm.
thousand dollars, and I build this thing up twice as fast. Now I have $300,000, and I go buy
Mhm.
15 cars. Do you see how I just started building a business? So where I,
Yeah.
where I
Makes
was selling
perfect
five
sense.
cars in a given period of time, now I'm selling
Mhm.
15, and it could be
Mhm.
with anything, right? So, but the point is
Yeah.
though, is that in order to do the other people's money thing the right way, if
Mhm.
I don't have my act together on my personal debt
Mhm.
situation, it's going to be very hard to pull it off because the pressures are so high that I would have a tendency, excuse me, to take that 100 grand that I borrowed and buy
Mhm.
4 cars, okay,
Mhm.
and take the other money
Mhm.
and use it like as if it was income,
Mhm.
and it's not. Or I
Yes.
would take the 5 grand that I made and I would spend that and like as if it
Yeah.
was true
You
income.
put it in cash flow, which can be a problem sometimes. You're like, "Oh, I need the cash flow right now. Let me just put this in here."
Yeah.
Right? And you'll spend it, and that won't be helpful. Yeah.
Well, I
I've been
mean, yeah, cash flow is a
yeah.
whole nother subject. We don't have time to get into that
Mhm.
today, so I will politely disagree with
Yes.
you on that. Actually it does go into it is cash flow into the business.
Mhm.
The difference is so cash flow is just money coming in, money going
Mhm.
out. So just think
Mhm.
about that. That's cash flow. It's like
Yeah.
a river.
Yeah.
So you have to
Yep.
ask yourself when you're running a business, is there money coming in? Yes or no? Is there money
Mhm.
going out? Yes or no? And the answer to that question is going to be yes and yes, hopefully, right?
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
but the bottom line is the money coming in has to exceed the money going out.
Mhm.
So that's
Mhm.
back to the income statement. But that said,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
if you spend the money, right? So you make that 5 grand, using that example,
Right.
you make that 5 grand, you spend $2,000 of that money. Is that
Mhm.
cash flow?
Hmm.
So I made five
Mhm.
positive cash flow, $5,000, right?